Hello, brains! As most of you know, I was diagnosed when I was 12, but a lot of people don't find out about their ADHD until later in life as adults, and that can come with some unique challenges. Since I don't have experience with that myself, I wanted to give you the opportunity to hear from somebody who does. Brett Thornhill is an ADHD coach and a fellow brain. I asked Brett everything that I could think of about what the process, including the emotional process, of being diagnosed as an adult is like. I think a lot of you might be able to relate. Interview starting in 3, 2, 1.
ADHD is not a failed version of normal, it's just a different way of being.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thank you for coming. I've been really excited to talk to you for a long time. Say hi to the brains.
Hi, brains. I've been looking forward to this. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Well, first of all, when were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed when I was 43, which is 7 years ago. I am going to be 50 very, very soon.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. It's funny, when you say you were diagnosed at 12, the very first thing I thought when I was diagnosed was, damn, I wish I was diagnosed when I was 12. So as it was 43, which is, relatively late. There are people who are getting diagnosed now much later than that. There are senior citizens who are getting diagnosed. Yeah, and it's becoming more and more common for adults to get diagnosed. Typically what happens, kids get diagnosed, and then through that process, the parent kind of goes, wait now, little junior is exactly like I was, right? So they end up getting diagnosed that way. Myself and my daughter, we did it the other way around. I actually got my diagnosis first, and then we kind of went, hey, she's just like me. And she ended up getting her diagnosis after me.
So what made you seek a diagnosis?
I had always experienced, what I know now are pretty common, feelings that are associated with ADHD, the imposter syndrome. I had a great deal of difficulty with academics. It's like I'm channel surfing through 30 different TV stations, but someone else is holding the remote control. I don't have control over which channel I'm watching when. And so there were always things that kind of didn't feel, it's tough to describe, but it's like this inner itch. I was never content, those kinds of things. And I found out afterwards that those are quite common, but really the breaking point was when I received a promotion into management, and I was responsible for a team, and by all accounts, my life had been pretty good. Things were going great outwardly. Inwardly, there was a tremendous amount of anxiety, even mild depression, and just dissatisfaction. And so that led me to just see a counselor, just see a therapist.
As an adult, once you made it to the psychiatrist's office, what was the actual diagnostic process like for you?
It was mainly just a Q&A. She took a lot of notes. She asked me a lot of questions, and it fit like a glove. There was no doubt in her mind after a few visits, but what I give her credit for is that she took her time and made sure that it was ADHD that was the primary cause of my issues. Well, I remember telling her, but I can't have ADHD because I hold down a job and I have a house and I have a family and, I pay my bills and that sort of thing. And she goes, yeah, but how hard is it? I went, it's tough. It's tough, It feels like I'm walking through 3 feet of water most of the time.
Did you feel like you were lazy?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Why is that?
I think because so many of my contemporaries, so many people that I knew, so many people I grew up with were able to do things that I wasn't able to do, and I always put it to work ethic. I know now that it was interest. I spent most of my life feeling like I was either lazy or I had to be the stupidest person in the room. Because when you're surrounded by people who think differently than you, and this is the thing about ADHD, is I try to get my clients to embrace their divergent thinking, because it can be really lonely if you're a divergent thinker. It can be very isolating. We don't grow up wanting to be different than everybody else. And if you don't fit in with everything else, then automatically there's an assumption that, well, there's something wrong. So it was actually quite relieving to know that there was something that I have that explains all of the crap that I never had an explanation for. And there's a real roller coaster of emotions that I've since found out are very similar to the same sort of emotions that you experience when you're going through a mourning process. Where you have that shock, you have that disbelief, you have acceptance, you have anger, you have all of those sorts of things. And what I equated it to afterwards was I realized that I was kind of mourning the person that I thought I might have been had I known earlier. So I was a little ticked off that I'm 43 years old. And, there's always two ways to look at something. And on the one hand, it was like, yeah, I had a family that loved me. I had good friends. I had a good career. Life had been pretty good. But how much better could it have been if I had only known, right? That's a bad place to go. That's not a good place to go, but you go there. And you start wondering, you have all these questions, and you really start to imagine this other life that doesn't exist, but you start imagining this other life and how it might have been. That was tough. It was hard not to look back. So I did a lot of research, and I found out a lot about ADHD, and I found out a lot about the strengths that are attached to ADHD as well. And eventually I just got tired. I got tired of looking back, wondering about what might have been. And I thought, okay, you've gained all this great new insight about yourself. There's got to be a way you can use this. Maybe it's time to look forward. Maybe this is your opportunity to take chances you've never taken before. Maybe now you have reasons to take leaps of faith that you never would have taken before.
Did you get treatment right away?
Pretty much. My psychiatrist was pretty good in that she sent me away to kind of digest. It's really easy to kind of go to, okay, fix it. Whatever it is, now you know what it is, fix it. And of course, as you know, medication is not about fixing. And ADHD treatment is not about fixing. But in short order, I went the medication route. I was quite open to that. And it made a huge difference in my life. The very first day I took my medication, I completed a project that had been sitting on my desk for a month and a half. I was in a meeting and had sat through an hour and a half meeting and realized when I walked out, I listened to everything that was happening in that meeting. I didn't get lost. My mind didn't wander. I'm not walking out of that meeting going, what the hell just happened? Which is how I felt most of the time when I walked out of meetings. So the changes were profound, but subtle, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't like take the pill and suddenly, you're wearing a red cape. It was more, take the pill and just, you're no longer walking in 3 feet of water.
How did you tell people? And how did you decide who to tell? And how did they respond?
Yeah, so that was interesting. When you're diagnosed, it's really profound for you, but you don't change in the eyes of others. And if they don't have an understanding of ADHD, and you make this announcement, you feel like you've rediscovered yourself. You better be content with that internally, because externally, it's not gonna make a whole lot of difference to other people. It feels like it should. I've made this huge discovery about myself, and I know myself now, and I know so much more about why I am the way I am, and everybody else is just like, yeah, you're the same person though. You're the same as you always were, and because they didn't have all the internal thoughts going on in the first place, right? There was a lot of disbelief, misunderstanding. People don't understand what it is. I shared with some of my family, some of whom decided to try to convince me that I was wrong. And I remember having this one conversation. I'm like, I'm informing you that I have ADHD. I'm not here to debate this. I have ADHD.
Did you attempt to educate the people who didn't believe you?
Yes, I still try to educate them. I used to get pissed off. It used to irritate me, and I would engage in arguments. The American Psychiatric Association calls ADHD the most well-researched psychiatric condition in existence. It's also one of the most treatable. It's also one of the most ignored. It's also one of the most denied. But it's an opportunity, so for every misunderstanding or misconception that they throw at you, bust down the myth, do some myth busting. If you engage in someone by saying, yeah, I used to think the same thing, but, here's what I know now. ADHD is not genetic. Well, yeah, I didn't think it was either. I had no idea. But you know what? ADHD is as genetic as height. And they've actually isolated this gene that's associated with ADHD now. So if you can engage people in those conversations, then I think that's a great opportunity. So now I do that more. I don't get upset with people anymore. I tend to get irritated more by people who allow their ignorance to impact the lives of others. So parents of kids who will not accept their ADHD bothers me. And what I say to those parents is, look, you know what? I have a very clear memory and appreciation for life before ADHD. And I don't consider ADHD in and of itself a gift. It comes with tremendous challenges and it can cause tremendous difficulties, but I absolutely consider the diagnosis a gift.
Brett actually had a lot more insights to share. What the coaching process is like, how to find a coach that works for you, his 3 pillars for ADHD success. He had so much, in fact, that we decided to do a bonus episode with him next week. If you can't wait till next week, check out his website, embraceYourADHD.ca. Link in the description. And of course, interviews like this would not be possible without the help of my Patreon supporters, like these brains. Thank you so much for believing in me. We've got a lot of exciting things coming for the channel, and none of this would be happening without you. Let us know what getting diagnosed was like for you. Leave a comment below, hit me up on Facebook or Twitter, and in the meantime, I'll be researching the next topic. See you next week. Bye, brains.
I think we start out life as individuals, and I think that through time, I think we're taught how to kind of fit in with everything else. And as we get older, I think as we get more comfortable with ourselves and I guess a little more confident, then that difference is something that we can embrace again, you know?